You could have revenue, customers, and even momentum, but still be building a business that is slowly eroding without you even realizing it. Now stick with me here, because you might say to yourself, I'm working harder than ever, and yet you might not feel that your business is where it should be. If that rings true, I want you to stick around till the end of this video, because I'm gonna help you skip years of headaches, trial and error, and wasted money. I also want you to understand that the nature of free content as you watch this is gonna devalue it. So imagine with me here that you spent $10,000 or $20,000 for a business consultant or growth strategist to give you this one-on-one, because typically that's what they would charge. Number one is lack of awareness. Not enough people know you exist. Most business owners tend to view marketing and advertising as a strictly transactional relationship. Yet, at the end of the day, the best product or service in the world will always be beat by the worst product or service in the world that has better market awareness and better marketing in general. And most of the time, I see business owners tend to flick it on and off like a light switch, when the actual nature of marketing or raising awareness of your product or service should be a uniform experience. Meaning right now, if you have no leverage to consistently generate awareness about your stuff, then you are falling behind the competition. If you're not running ads, if you're not posting content, if you are not cold calling, if you're not cold DMing, if you're not doing something to get somebody to know you exist, then there's no reason for you to be investing in things that people should be seeing. Meaning that most of the time, a lot of business owners will emphasize redeveloping a website, building out some sort of new offer, or changing the graphics on their packaging, when what little good it will do if nobody actually sees it. So what I want you to look at is, how do people actually find out you exist? You can't just wait for them to randomly find you on Google. You can't hope on a whim that they're gonna walk by your door if you have a brick and mortar location. And most importantly, you shouldn't be doing any of those unless you understand where people actually hang out. So what I would recommend doing is identifying who your key customer or client is, finding where they hang out, and just focusing on getting awareness within one of those outlets. Meaning if most of your customers or clients hang out on Facebook, start posting all of your content on there. And I say this because a lot of the times, even when businesses get into marketing, they tend to overextend. What happens is they'll run Google ads, they'll do Facebook ads, they'll start creating Instagram content, they'll start sending out physical mail, all at the same time in a matter of months, which means that A, you can't really track what did and didn't work, and B, you're not really actually using your resources efficiently, and C, it's usually what I call shotgun marketing, meaning that you're trying to play a numbers game, which is essentially that if enough people know about your stuff, then the reality is that more of them will buy. And yes, that does ring true, but it's not exactly a good use of your money if you're just trying to put all your hands in these different pots and hoping that one of them works. So what I would recommend is just sticking with one outlet to begin with, based on where your target customer or client already hangs out at. But most importantly, if you're not doing anything to raise awareness of your product or service right now, then you're going to fall behind the competition. Because at the end of the day, the loudest voice always wins. It doesn't matter how good you think you are, there's somebody out there who has a product or service that could be 10% of its total value of what you're offering, yet they're doing 150% more marketing and awareness efforts. They will beat you simply based on that alone. So start to focus on raising awareness as much as possible about your product or service, and start to do it strategically by already identifying who you actually want to buy your stuff and going after the outlets where they hang out. Number two is a lack of focus. You're trying to serve way too many different people at a time. And this most often rings true in the business to business sector, but it can apply to anything, whether you're trying to sell a bag of coffee beans or a high-ticket coaching service. Most people, especially when they start their first business and usually go through that rough startup period, tend to think that if they work with everyone, they'll be able to capture more of the market. But in fact, the opposite is true, because when you're trying to grow a business that way, you're not really getting good at anything. You're not experiencing compounding growth. You're not building proof. You're not building case studies. You're not getting referrals because you don't really have any criteria. Your door is always open. Think about it this way. If you wanted to work fully custom with anybody who didn't really have a set criteria, then you have to customize it each time. Everybody you talk to has different wants, needs, likes, desires, outcomes, outcomes that they're looking for. And most importantly, you can't really outsource it. You can't hire people to recreate that same result because it's usually dependent on you or the leadership involved. You're the actual product. And in that case, it's more advantageous to build a personal brand and just become that type of person. Yet a lot of the times people want to sell their product or service underneath a different name, a different brand, and yet the two aren't really compatible. Contrast that to if you just focused on one customer or client even today. Think about who pays the invoices on time, who gets the best results, who constantly has the same issues that you see over and over and over again. The reality is that your job would actually become easier and you'd make more money for doing less work because you'd be deploying the same blueprint over and over again. You would start to better understand that person's needs, their pain, their wants. You'd be able to more clearly target them. You would be able to narrow your scope. Your marketing would become more powerful. Your copywriting, your website, everything would feel like it was speaking to that person so that when they looked at it, they'd say, hey, that's me. So what I would recommend doing is seriously consider focusing on somebody. Instead of trying to do this thing where you're working with every person under the sun, really start to self-reflect. Go through your CRM, go through your past invoices, go through your point of sale. If you've already had a company with a series of people who bought your stuff, and look at what the trends are between the biggest people who keep consistently coming back. It might be an age thing, it might be a gender thing, it might be an industry, it might be a job title, but there are definitely trends that you're probably not realizing could just be one or two switches away inside of your business and marketing and sales operations, and you could be double, tripling your revenue by just moving those resources into somebody who really needs your stuff instead of focusing on these people who don't really want or need it. So I advise you, especially if you're under the 1 mil revenue mark per year, to just start focusing your efforts on one type of customer or client so that you could skip all of this, hey, I don't know where my next customer or client's coming from, I don't know what their needs are, and most of the time you might be asking them in these 2-hour-long Zoom calls, what are you looking for? What do you want? What is it? This type of thing. When really, if you flip the script and you started to anticipate those needs, you would become a category killer, a member of one. You'd be known for something. You would be able to deploy that same blueprint, like I said before, and you'd be able to hire people to pull the right switches to deliver the same result. But right now, if they're just buying from you or if they're just buying from leadership, then that bottleneck is probably a lack of focus because it's too customized and it's too dependent on somebody with a wide array of skill sets, such as yourself, to actually either get them into the door, to sell them on the thing, and most importantly, to deliver the result. By the way, before we continue, if you're still struggling to figure out what bottleneck is causing your business to stagnate, you can click on the link in the description, and in 30 seconds, I've built a tool that shows you exactly why your business has not achieved the success it deserves. All you have to do is answer a few questions, and you'll instantly know the first thing you should be working on. So go check it out. It's in the pinned comment and the link in the description as well. Number 3 is a lack of differentiation. You probably look and act identical to your competition. And that might sound pretty harsh, but let's face it, if I wanted to buy your product or service right now, and you cannot objectively or measurably tell me why you are better or different than similar options on the market, the only thing I have to resort to is price. Can you give it to me for as cheap as possible? And you don't want to enter a price war where you race to the bottom. Yet a lot of the times, people don't realize that is what they're effectively doing. Your positioning is not relying on fluff statements. Nobody cares that you're local, that you're friendly, that you have good customer service. These are to make up for the deficit for the fact that you're probably not competitive. And in reality, majority of business owners will use fluff statements like these because they are not different. You have to take a hard look at what your product or service is and make sure it's not commodified. Because at the end of the day, if you're a commodity, meaning that somebody in the market has a nearly identical service or product to yours, then why should I choose you? In actuality, all you have to do is make a few minor tweaks to your positioning or presentation. Let me give you an example. You have roofer A who says, I can put shingles on your roof for $10,000. And you have roofer B who says, I can guarantee that I will keep your family dry for the next 25 years. One of those taps into an emotional response, shows validity, and that they stand by their service with a guarantee. That is a differentiator that would split the difference. I had a conversation, for instance, with an HVAC owner inside of his business, and the reality is he kept telling me how great his experience was, but he couldn't boil down what that experience actually meant. And it not only is dependent on what you're actually putting out there in the market, but what your actual customer or client values in that experience. And all too often, we as business owners are too close to the product or service. So what you want to do is ask the people who you're trying to sell this thing to, or have already sold it to, what they liked about you. Because then you can actually start to quantify and measure that difference. Take the attributes of what people already like about you or what they would like to see in your product or service and put that into the conversation, whether it's on your business card, your website, your portfolio, anywhere where somebody interacts with your business, especially if you're trying to advertise. It's extremely important to sound different than the competition. You do not want to sell a job title or a product category because everybody else is selling the exact same thing. For instance, if I were to offer something to differentiate myself in the weight loss industry, my options are to sell as a physical trainer, which, let's face it, that assumes that everybody knows what that is, and that assumes that they know that I can get the results, and most importantly, that assumes that they have the resources and are actively looking for a personal trainer. Or I can position myself as somebody who helps people lose 10 pounds in 30 days. I give them nutrition guides, I give them workout routines, I give them a Facebook community, I give them a refer a friend discount, I give them weekly accountability texts, and if they don't lose the weight in 30 days, I will work for free until they do. Fundamentally, they're both physical trainers, except the one who has the more compelling offer and positioning in the market will be able to charge double, if not triple the rates, and somebody will look at the other one and say, I can't get this. And I would even layer that on top with the very beginning of your ideal client or customer profile. So that physical trainer might only work with busy tech CEOs as an example. Start to look for ways that you can differentiate yourself in the market. And not only that, you'd be surprised how many markets are commoditized, and with just a few tweaks, you could stand out and grow like crazy. A lot of the times this happens usually in blue-collar industries, in regulatory industries, in anything where it feels kind of boring. At the end of the day, it's a lot easier to take something that has pretty much been done to death for hundreds of years and make it slightly different than it is for these new and emerging industries where everybody's trying to enter the same space at the same time to try and get what they can. So look at your offering, look at your product or service, and start to either position it artificially by being something to somebody, and that could be your standout factor, or by reducing or mitigating that risk and increasing the value with more add-ons into your offer, with more bonuses, with a guarantee, with something that makes it stand out. Then you can formulate a value statement. Instead of saying, I'm a physical trainer, you say, I help busy tech CEOs achieve their physical fitness and weight loss goals in just 30 days without an expensive gym membership. That is something that differentiates that physical trainer from the other one. Number 4 is a lack of systems. If your business is built on you or the leadership and its ability to execute, then it will always be the constraint of growth. All too often, I have seen this in extremely small businesses where usually it's under 5 employees or maybe a solopreneur. Yes, that makes sense. But I've also seen this as high as multi-million-dollar businesses. I had a conversation with somebody who was doing $3 million annually in an IT company, and literally in the Zoom call, he was answering things that should have gone to a receptionist or one of his team members. That is an owner-operator constraint because there's no systems in place. Think about every franchise business you've ever interacted with. When you have to call tech support or when you have to get something done at a big business, you're not buying from the owners, you're not buying from the CEO, you're not dealing with leadership, you're dealing with people who are trained utilizing systems. And more often than not, everything is probably dependent on you to actually get done. Usually the biggest symptoms are sales, marketing, and operations, meaning that they only buy from you, meaning that you actually need to be there to keep the business running, or meaning that you are in essence the brand, that you can't distinctly separate yourself from what you're trying to sell, and they're actually trying to market you in an effort to generate business. So the reality is that most of the time, if you don't have a system, you don't have predictability. And if you don't have predictability, then you don't have scalability. Every big business, every successful one, everyone that's made tons of money has a system in place. And if you don't have one right now, meaning that you don't have some way to consistently acquire customers or clients that's not dependent on you, meaning that your marketing is not operating without your direct involvement, you're still going to networking events, you're still cold calling people personally, or meaning very big one that the ops are not functioning without you, meaning that if you were to leave your business for 60 days, not only would it not run, it would probably collapse, where it should be the opposite. It should be able to run with you and in fact grow without you when you reach a certain point, that you have a systems constraint. You need to start to seriously think about and reverse engineer how your business operates. What I like to do is what's called a user journey, meaning from the very beginning of when you wake up to the very end of your actual workday, write out every step that happens in between for sales, marketing, and operations, and start to cross out the biggest time wasters that could essentially be offboarded to somebody else. There's likely a lot of things inside of here that you just need to operationalize and build a system around so that it's repeatable. So start to think about how you can just systematize this, because as boring as it is, the systems that you put in place will actually need to not only be executed by your future employees to grow the business, but most importantly, I guarantee you, if you wrote down what you're actually doing, you would be surprised at how much stuff wastes time, wastes money, and if you just actually put some scarcity and urgency, meaning I'm gonna get this done by this time, or most importantly, you actually zoomed out and looked at what was gonna give you the most leverage in growing the business, you would be surprised at what you found, because most of it probably lives up here or in the minds of the people who are also your co-founders or leaders. It shouldn't be that way. So start to build systems in your business, otherwise it will start to collapse under its own weight because it's all gonna fall on you. Finally, number 5, pretending to be a business. And this usually means that the owner, the founder, the leaders are actually avoiding the things that are typically hardest or boring, but that will actually grow the business. And oftentimes they do so inadvertently. It's almost like a play. They're pretending, they're playing the part of a business owner, of a founder that's been established for years. And the symptoms are usually that you're just focusing on things that don't matter at this stage. How pretty the website looks, what the packaging looks like, the font choice, your company values, the branding. None of that matters right now. Your goal is simple. Sell as much stuff as possible so that you can maintain cash flow and stay in the game of business as long as possible. If you're not doing either one of those right now, especially if you are just starting out or just started your business or in that awkward startup phase, then stop doing all this other stuff that's just wasting your time and money. You need to just sell something and keep doing that over and over again. That's the big secret to business. I want to illustrate this with 2 startups that I interacted with that will really help you understand why this matters. The first one was a fabricator for quartz and marble countertops. Think like high-end houses. And they bought a 15,000 square foot warehouse just south of the major metro area. And I immediately came in and asked, how much have you sold? What does buying from you look like? How much inventory do you have remaining? And instead of hearing, okay, well, we are not making any money, we're in the red right now, they decided to go invest in this brand engineer who sold them on a fancy logo. They decided to make their website as confusing as possible with copy that didn't make sense, and they decided to make buying from them an extremely difficult process. All they have to do is sell more of these things. And if there are 500 other fabricators within the same market, which in this case there are a lot of them who are competing on exactly the same thing, then they're gonna be stuck as a commodity. They're trying to create a profitable business, but they're diverting all their resources into all this stuff that doesn't matter, and they haven't even made their first sale. The second startup was an ex-Googler who quit her job and wanted to start a luxury tea brand. And instead of asking her, well, how can we sell this as efficiently as possible so that we build brand equity, which by the way, if you really want to build brand equity, it's not by picking a fancy logo or having a fancy website, it's by delivering on the result. She instead wanted to focus on the look and feel, the packaging, the high-end positioning. Yet what's ironic is that I told her I have 25 tea brands sitting right now inside of my pantry. What are you going to do to make it a no-brainer to buy your tea brand, to actually make the difference as clear as possible, to make the risk as low as possible and the value as high as possible? And instead, what you heard was, nope, I'm gonna skip 100 years of what would essentially be building brand equity and start off as if I were an established brand. So the irony of creating a luxury brand is you can't skip the journey, you can't skip the steps, you cannot skip the rite of passage to actually earn that mantle. A lot of the times, legacy brands have been around for so long that they don't need to do that anymore, and more so, they were built on the foundation of innovation, differentiation, and trying to position themselves as something unique. Yet going back to the point, if you understand that you can't film an Apple commercial and get the same results as Apple would, that you can't post the same thing as a celebrity would on social media and get the same level of engagement, you'd understand that you're just pretending to be a business owner right now. So look at what your bottleneck actually is and just focus on the boring thing. You have to earn your place in the market. You can't skip the steps because people see right through that. In fact, nowadays consumers are even smarter and wiser to this type of thing. So if you want to stop pretending to be a business owner and start thinking like a successful entrepreneur or an operator who is building a machine that actually produces consistent cash flow and results and builds brand equity as a result of delivering what they promised with their product or service, then all you have to do is click the link in the description. 30 seconds, you can find out where your primary bottleneck is, or otherwise you could just keep focusing on all the things that are going to hold you back, that are just going to waste your time and money. But I guarantee you, your website is fine, your business card is fine, your branding is fine, your corporate values are fine. You just need to focus on actually delivering the result, and people will actually buy your thing. It's that simple. But I hope this video was valuable to you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or specifics about your business, be sure to comment below. I do put out a video like this once a week, so make sure to subscribe as well if you want to stay up to date and ahead of your competition. But that's all I got today. Until then, I'll see you next time.